In January,
KSJE is supported by Beatles vs. Stones, a musical showdown, coming to the Farmington Civic Center on Saturday, January 12th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets for this all-ages show range from $35 to $65. Find out more at fmtn.org/Civic Center or at 505-599-1148. Beatles vs. Stones, a musical showdown at the Farmington Civic Center, Saturday, January 12th. About -5 degrees outside our studios here at San Juan College. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in this morning. Our weather forecast calls for a mostly sunny day today, but still somewhat chilly. It's going to be about 17 degrees for a high today. Tonight's low down to 4, a bit warmer than we saw this morning. 24 for a high tomorrow, 34 by Saturday, but another chance of snow coming in Saturday night. Low 25 Saturday, and more chances for snow maybe Sunday and Monday. We will keep an eye on that, certainly, as we get a bit closer to the weekend. So, my guest on the radio this morning, local archaeologist Paul Reed, is joining us from his home near Taos, New Mexico, where it's got to be just as balmy, if not a bit cooler this morning. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. Yeah, beautiful blue skies. Wee bit chilly, as they say. Right,
just a little bit. Okay. But that New Mexico blue skies helps, even if it's bitterly cold outside. That can certainly help. Better than a gray, cloudy, overcast day, that's for sure.
That's right.
So, very good. Well, we've been talking a little bit about the cold weather and how it affected the ancestral Puebloans and other peoples who have lived here in this region for hundreds of years. And the other thing I wanted to mention and talk about this morning a little bit with you, Paul Reed, is the federal government shutdown, which is happening, and we see it and hear it in the news all the time, and Congress working on a compromise. The president certainly talking about some bills that he would sign and other bills that he wouldn't sign, but be that as it may, it is affecting national parks and some other federal installations, and that's something that you and I can talk about on our program this morning. And so I know Aztec Ruins had some impacts from this shutdown, and certainly the Grand Canyon and some other areas in our neck of the woods certainly being impacted by this federal government shutdown, right?
Right. I mean, as far as the timing, the winter is perhaps the best time for something this sort of catastrophic to happen.
Sure.
Summer would be truly amazing with millions, tens of millions of people on the road trying to go to parks. But we're seeing some real effects. Down at Chaco, the shutdown occurred on the 21st, which was actually the winter solstice. And I had a couple of friends from Taos who had made the journey over, just to experience that in the park, and they were able to do that on the Friday. But with the shutdown on Saturday morning, they ushered all the visitors out of the campground. I mean, the hardy souls who decided to camp, right? And everyone else. And, Chaco had planned some substantial, ceremony, some sky gazing, depending upon the weather. And everything that was planned for that Saturday got canceled. So
right.
That was pretty devastating. Aztec as well has had to close its doors. So there are the effects of people wanting to go to these places, not being able to. One effect, there's all the employees, of course. As an archaeologist, I have dozens of friends who work for the National Park Service, across the country, and they've all been, told to go home. I mean, obviously these are non-essential jobs according to, the way things are defined. But even if, let's say, folks were planning to take time off for the holidays and had put in leave requests, gotten those approved at whatever point, they didn't get paid. So even the folks who had planned to be off, they're waiting on paychecks. So this is having substantial effects. The other issue we're talking about is, people are still going to these places. So, I've seen some video of sites being impacted in Bears Ears. I believe people are sneaking into Chaco Canyon. And, these places can't take visitation without supervision. So, we can't have people going into areas and potentially climbing on walls, as as a minor issue, but especially the larger issues of, hey, is this open season now for looting? So
right.
With no law enforcement, no ranger presence, people getting into these areas, we could have substantial impacts to the heritage that we all care about and to a wide range of cultural resources. So these are big concerns, and I think all of us are rooting for some kind of a solution. As this week approaches its end, that we get something done in Washington end of this week or next week, certainly, because the effects are just going to get worse and worse.
Right, and that's a concern for many folks. And as you mentioned, without any kind of supervision, folks are driving around the turnstiles or just blowing through the toll booths and things where there's no attendance fees or admission fees that are being taken because there's nobody working there. So they're going into these parks and these sensitive areas without any kind of, as you mentioned, rangers or anyone else, and causing other issues because us humans, we tend to leave trash, and trash isn't getting collected and things like that. And some of these, even people that don't mean to do any damage, but they're doing it maybe unintentionally, right?
Right, simply being there and not without the normal visitor services that are occurring is a real problem, and I think most people in the country, I believe this, and I want to believe this, are responsible enough to say, hey, this park's closed, this monument is closed, I shouldn't go here. But, we are in the age of me first, right, and taking selfies in all these places and all the other things that people tend to do because they're not thinking perhaps in a community way. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of people with that sort of attitude to create impacts, to all these sensitive places. So, again, that's the obvious reason to push for a resolution to what's keeping the parks closed. But, also just to put out a plea to people and, stay away from the federal parks, and monuments. We have Solomon Ruins is open. All of our state parks are open, plenty of museums in the area. And let's just be responsible and let this issue get resolved in Washington, D.C. and stay out of the areas where we're not supposed to be.
That's a great point, Paul Reed. And again, I think folks need to think about that as they're going out. And I do feel badly for folks who maybe are on this, maybe a trip of a lifetime from another state, and they've come all this way and they want to see the Grand Canyon, and they are met with a closed gate because maybe they hoped that this would be resolved by the time they got here, or something like that, or Chaco Canyon or Aztec ruins.
Right. I mean, we can certainly be very sympathetic. This, from my perspective, the shutdown is really not necessary. It's just a question of our leaders in Washington doing their job and governing. Yeah, and to plan a trip for months and months and to be met with a locked gate is a challenge. So, we just have to lean on our leaders and say, let's not do this again. But in the meantime, we have to be adaptable and shift those plans and figure out a way to, continue whatever we're trying to do without impacting these resources, but particularly in the parks like Chaco and Aztec that are focused on the cultural resources, to really put those first. Right. And, stay out of these areas. So.
Very true. And as you mentioned, there are some great alternatives, Solomon Ruins being one of them, that is owned by San Juan County and available and open during this whole time and open all the time, and others around the country as well. So there's certainly other alternatives if folks are wanting to see some of this history that we have all around us here. So, Paul, very good. I think we are out of time once again this month, sorry to say, but thank you.
Well, enjoyed it a lot, Scott, and I'm going to solve the technological issues, so
okay.
we'll be connecting either in person or via Skype for next month.
That's all right. It didn't stop us, so the show must go on, and it did. So thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Scott.
You bet. That's Paul Reed from Solomon Ruins and Archaeology Southwest, my guest here on KSJE. We'll check on the economy when we come back in just a moment. The time right now is 8:50.
In January 1788, 6 Trim